Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple, book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Currently, we are in Second Chronicles, chapter 26. And this is a very sad story to me because of the king Uzziah, and he is talked about even in the book of Isaiah. He was a good king, but his pride led to his downfall. And that's a lesson I think we all should take away from this, because he was a good king. Now, I should also note, too, that the sternness of God also, we will see this downfall and why God was so stern. It wasn't just an Old Testament thing. In other words, I say, people always say that God is the God of wrath, the Old Testament God. And as I repeatedly say, that the Old Testament reveals the merciful God over and over again, more than the God of wrath. But we will see why he fell. And okay, chapter 26, verse 1 says, all the people of Judah took Uzziah, who was 16 years old, and made him king in place of his father Amaziah. He built Eloth and restored it to Judah after Amaziah the king rested with his fathers. Uzziah was 16 years old when he became king, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jecoliah from Jerusalem. Interesting that he had one of the longest rules, beginning from a young age. If he was an adult, of course, it would have been around 40 years, but 52 years is a little longer than the average king. But David and Solomon only ruled 40 years. Verse 4 says, he did what was right in the Lord's sight, as his father Amaziah had done. He sought God throughout the lifetime of Zechariah, the teacher of the fear of God, and during the time that he sought the Lord, God gave him success. The implications here, like Joaz, remember that Jehoiada was his mentor and also had a powerful impact on his life. So much so that when Jehoiada was removed, in other words, he passed away, Joash turned quickly. Now, Uzziah won't turn, but the implication seems to be here that it says, during his lifetime, he sought the Lord and gave him success, but the influence certainly seemed to be Zechariah, the teacher of the fear of God. It said Uzziah went out to wage war against the Philistine, and he tore down the wall of Gath, and the wall of Jebnith, and the wall of Ashdod, and he built cities in the vicinity of Ashdod and among the Philistines. God helped him against the Philistines, the Arabs that lived in Gerbal, and the Meunites. The Amorites gave Uzziah tribute money, and his fame spread as far as the entrance of Egypt, for God made him very powerful. So right away we see God is tremendously blessing Uzziah because he's seeking God. His heart is right with God, and so God is prospering him. He's one of the most prosperous kings, and especially, of course, during this time when you consider the kings of Israel and a lot of the kings of Judah were extremely wicked. Verse 9, Uzziah built towers in Jerusalem at the corner gate, the valley gate, and the corner buttress, and he fortified them, since he had many cattle both in the Judean foothills and the plains. He built towers in the desert and dug many wells, and since he was a lover of the soil, he had farmers and vine dressers in the hill and the fertile land. Uzziah had an army equipped for combat that went out to war by divisions according to their assignments, as recorded by Jeiel, the court secretary, and Manasseh, the officer under the authority of Hananiah, one of the king's commanders. Again, I know you should be very well of me apologizing for butchering a lot of these pronunciations of these Hebrew names. Verse 12, the total number of the heads of the family was 2,600 brave warriors. Under the authority was an army of 307, 500,000 equipped for combat, a powerful force to help the king against the enemy. Uzziah provided the entire army with shields, spears, helmets, armors, bows, and sling stones. He made skillful design devices in Jerusalem to shoot arrows and catapult large stones for use in the towers and on the corners. So his fame spread even to distant places, for he was marvelously helped until he became strong. Now, we see what that means right here. But he had these, for the time, I think we've seen images of them. They look like they got these little arm things on them. They had little, almost like cups, not cups. So what am I looking at here? My brain freezing here. They're like the teaspoon measuring devices. You got the little stem, you got the little bowl. You can put a rock in it, and then they would catapult it, just like that. And then they were able to shoot multiple arrows. He designed all this. I would also say God gave him the wisdom also to help him design all of this. Verse 16, but when he became strong, and now we know why he said that, he grew arrogant, and it led to his own destruction. And this is sad here, because remember, he kept seeking God. Throughout his whole life, he kept seeking God. But when he became strong, verse 16 again, he became arrogant, and it led to his own destruction. Pride is something that we're going to see this. I think this is a good illustration of pride. I think we all have been guilty of pride. Some people are more the arrogance in their pride, and this is what I think the kind of subject here is. But you become so arrogant, so prideful that it blinds you from reality, and so therefore you can't see, and therefore it leads to your downfall. It said, but when he became strong, he grew arrogant, and it led to his destruction. He acted unfaithfully against the Lord, his God, by going into the temple sanctuary to burn incense on the incense altar. Now, huge no-no, because you remember during David's time, when David had a good heart, he wanted to bring the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem, but he did it in the wrong way. He had other people carry the ark. The law of Moses was crystal clear that only the priests and Levites would handle the things of worship. Only them. Crystal clear. He knew this history. So for him to do this is why this is the height of his pride, the arrogance of his pride, that he would think to go into the temple. Why did he think this? I don't know. But that he would think that he could go into the temple of God and then offer the incense. Verse 17. Azariah the priest, along with 80 brave priests of the Lord, went in after him. They took their stand against King Uzziah and said, Uzziah, you have no right to offer incense to the Lord. Only the consecrated priests, the descendants of Aaron, have the right to offer incense. Leave the sanctuary, for you have acted unfaithfully. You will not receive honor from the Lord God. A strong rebuke. And then, of course, exactly what the word of the Lord said, which, again, King Uzziah knew very well. verse 19. Uzziah, with the fire pan in his hands to offer incense, was enraged. So when they tell him that, he gets angry. Again, in his anger. And that's why it said that they were brave, because remember in other instances you saw other people who the king did react. Joash, remember, reacted harshly. And there have been other wicked kings, and oftentimes, sadly, good kings who have turned bad, and in some cases they imprison, and in some cases even kill the messengers, the prophet. So it says Uzziah with the fire pan in his hand to offer incense was enraged, but when he became enraged with the priests in the presence of the priests in the Lord's temple besides the altar of incense, a skin disease broke out on his forehead. So right there you see this instant judgment by God. Skin disease. Now, of course, if you're reading from probably a lot of other translation, but for sure the King James, leprosy is used here. The Holy Christian Standard Translation uses the term skin disease. Okay, but a skin disease broke out upon his forehead. Then Azariah the chief priest and all the priests turned to him and saw that it was disease. It was disease on his forehead. They rushed him out. He himself also hurried out to get out because the Lord had afflicted him. And so Uzziah was diseased to the time of his death. He lived in quarantine with a serious skin disease and was excluded from access to the Lord's temple, while his son Jotham was over the king's household, governing the people of the land. Again, this is sad because he was such a good king, to the fact that when he died, God, we will see this in the book of Isaiah. In fact, look at verse 22. It says, now the prophet Isaiah, the son of Amos, wrote about the rest of the events of Uzziah's reign from beginning to end. And Uzziah rested with his fathers, and he was buried with his father in the burial ground of the king's cemetery. For they said, he had a skin disease. His son Jotham became king in his place. Again, very sad. Let me read, by the way, let me quickly go. I'm going to show you this in Isaiah chapter 6. Isaiah chapter 6. I just want to read this quickly to show you what he was referring to. It says, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord seated on a high and lofty throne, and his robe filled the temple. I just wanted to read that because, again, this is the book of Isaiah itself, the writings of Isaiah. And so a couple of things about this. One, that Isaiah, the time of Isaiah, I'll get to that in a moment. And so here we're at the time of the Isaiah the prophet, which is about 120 years before the Babylonian exile. And the reason why this is important to understand, this time of Isaiah, of course, Isaiah being a major prophet, right? Being one of the major, you can say he begins the prophetic time, the prophetic warning, the period of the writings of the prophets. So Isaiah, then you have the other minor prophets, as they're called. And so you see this timeline. This right here, the presence of Isaiah is marking the prophetic voice where God begins to prophesy, to warn Israel. It's about 120 years period to turn from their wickedness, which they won't. Okay? And that's the interesting thing about Isaiah's timeline here. And of course we'll get more into Isaiah the prophet himself when we read his writings. Chapter 27. Jotham was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jerusha, daughter of Zadok. He did what was right in the Lord's sight, as his father Uzziah had done. In addition, he did not enter the sanctuary, but the people still behaved corruptly. Now, one thing I want to say right here, because notice this. Remember, the narrative focus is on the kings, and in this case, the descendants of David, the line of Jesus. Now, I said this in another series, that sometimes we don't always know why God judges. Remember, Uzziah punished the people who had killed his father, but he didn't punish the children. But yet in other portion of the scriptures we see where it seems like children are being punished and communities are being punished. We get a little glimpse here as to why. He says, but the people still behave corruptly. And that's not always highlighted, but like here we got a glimpse. So sometimes when you go back and when you read through and you go, man, why was God so harsh on everybody? Well, because it's not highlighted, but they were still behaving corruptly. And remember, not only were they behaving corruptly, oftentimes, almost in every generation, they would have to tell the people, put away your idols. Stop worshiping the pagan gods, right? Stop your fornication, your adultery, your sin. All of these things right here, the people were doing. Verse 3, Jotham built the upper gate of the Lord's temple, and he built extensively on the wall of Ophel. He also built cities in the hill countries of Judah and fortified the towers of the forest. He waged war against the king of the Amorites. He overpowered the Amorites. In that year they gave him 7,500 pounds of silver, 50,000 bushels of wheat, 50,000 bushels of barley. They paid the same in the second and third years. So Jotham strengthened himself because he did not waver in obeying the Lord his God. As for the rest of the events of Jotham, along with his wars and his ways, note that they are written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. Jotham rested with his father, and he was buried in the city of David. His son Ahaz became king in his place. So he didn't have a long rule here. Just to like his mid-40s. So that's kind of sad, just to his mid-40s. And well, not mid-40s, 40, 41. Okay. But he was a good king, nevertheless. He was a good king, and he was anyway. He was a good king. All right, hold on. Now he again, not much is told about Jotham, other than the fact that he was a good king. I'm wondering why he had such a short life, but nevertheless, he still was a good king. And unlike his father, at least it's not recorded, his father was a good king, one of the best kings, but his pride got him into trouble. All right, guys, look, don't forget to like and share this video, and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. If you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. Hit that subscribe button. Till next time, I'll see you then.